Our first storyteller is somebody I've been acquainted to and you've been acquainted with for quite a long time. We don't particularly like her, but you know, she's just one of those people who's around a lot, and you just kind of put up with her. I'm sorry.
We actually adore her. She is the co-owner of the Poor Richards Complex, toy store, coffee house, the bookstore, Patricia's Riches, and the pizza.
Poor Richard's Pizza.
Poor Richards Pizza. And she has now founded another business of her own. It's another therapy business called Nature's Practice, Inc. So please welcome Patrica Seator.
I didn't know I was going to be confronted with this tonight, but Warren, I've always had a little trouble with you too.
Why does that get such a big laugh?
I'm really honored to have been asked to tell a story tonight. I think this is a great project that you guys have been doing. I'm going to tell a story about a dream. And dreams have been a part of my life since actually I was very young. I took an interest in dreams and remember dreams from back to when I was an early teen. And was very involved in dreams when I lived in New York and was, even before I was studying to be a therapist. And when I did become a therapist, of course, dreams were a very important part of my practice. So I've been involved in my own and other people's dreams for my whole life, almost, my whole adult life. And when I first came to Colorado Springs from New York City, it was 1990, I planned to start a practice, and a year into being here, I started a dream group. And it was the olden days, so I borrowed mailing lists and put out flyers. It was way before Facebook or anything convenient like that for marketing. And I started my group, and shortly after I got a phone call from a talk show host of a local radio station. And I actually don't remember the radio station. It was sort of a blur when I was first here. Richard thinks it was KRDO, but I think it was some like rock and jock station. It was seemed like it. And I was sort of, perplexed about how to really bring together radio and dreams. Radio is such a public forum as this is, and dreams are just so personal and so intimate. But I was up for an adventure, so I said yes. And one of the things that I really love about dreams is that it really puts us in touch with a parallel world, a world that's going on all the time, whether or not we're aware of it. And it's a world that actually tells us what's about to emerge in our lives. In this very mysterious way, somehow deep inside of us, we know that. And when we are able to approach dreams in a way that's very different from our daily way of living, our daily consciousness, which is sort of, so here's a question, tell me the answer, right? You have to sort of approach a dream with humility and a kind of expectancy and wonder, and allow that world of the dream to open up. And it's a really very mysterious interface between our conscious minds and this process that's going on all the time under the surface. So being on a radio program was a little antithetical to that kind of way of thinking. But I showed up. It was very early in the morning. It was one of those morning programs, so there was a lot of traffic reports and news stories and weather, and then there'd be some music. And in between that, I would talk about dreams, and people would call in and share dreams. And it wasn't like my usual format. So I would get dreams like my uncle died about a year ago, and a couple months ago I had a dream. And he came and sat on the edge of my bed and we had a conversation. So, was that a dream or did you really come here? You know, and it's that kind of question that you can't ask of a dream. You know, you can't sort of put the floodlight on it and say, okay, give me the answer. You got to kind of move into that world and become a part of it. So somewhere toward the end of the program, I got a call from a woman who was quite elderly, and you could tell that by her voice. And she also had an accent that said to me that she was from the same part of the country I was, somewhere in the middle of the country, the breadbasket, you know, where most people back then, and she probably was born around 1900, would have grown up on farms. And she had just this incredible sort of salt of the earth, authenticity and pure sweetness to her nature. It just came through in the conversation. And she told me that she had been having a recurring dream for about 8 months, let's say. It was somewhere over half a year. And the same dream was happening repeatedly. So I asked her what the dream was, and she said, well, all it is just 3 chickens, and they're looking at me. and I said, oh, and has anything happened? She says, oh no, they just look at me. And I thought, well, you know, here we are up against the mystery. 3 chickens are looking at her, and we're on the radio. So, you know, I asked her, you know, they didn't do anything. I asked her if she had any feelings. She said, well, not particularly. You know, it's just the same dream, and that's that, you know. So I said, well, like a good dream therapist, I said, so what are your associations, and I probably didn't use quite that word, what are your associations with chickens? You know, did you ever own chickens? Did you grow up on a farm and you had chickens? And she said, well, as a matter of fact, I did grow up on a farm and we did have chickens. And you know, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my parents gave me some hatchlings. And they told me that these chickens would be my chickens, that they would be my pets. And I just was so thrilled, and I raised those chickens. And one thing that a lot of people don't know about chickens is you can train them. And so I trained my chickens to do tricks. And I took them around. I was a 4-H, so I took them down to the county fair every year. And I'd show off my chickens, and people got to know me for my chickens. And so I used to get phone calls for birthday parties and special events. And I'd take my chickens, and we'd do the tricks. And I was just so proud of my chickens, and I just loved them. And they were such an important part of my life, you know, because I lived out on this farm, and I used to get to go to all different places in the county and meet all kinds of people. And I just, you know, it just sort of opened up my world to have these chickens in my life. And I said, well, you know, that's a really wonderful story. And I'm just wondering, Mary, why those chickens are appearing in your dream right now. I mean, do you have any sense of why they might show up now? And you know, I asked her, you know, tell me the end of the story of your chickens. And she said, well, actually, that's a whole other story unto itself. Because, you see, when I was about 13 years old, my parents were in a real bad car crash. And they both died. And all of a sudden, I didn't have my parents, and I didn't have my home, and all the kids had to go to different relatives. And I went to an aunt in town, and when I went in there, you know, I said to her, can I bring my chickens? And she said, honey, I can take on you, but I can't take on your chickens. And she said, and I couldn't really fuss about it. When you think about it, it was pretty generous of her to take me in, and I didn't want to make any ruckus about it, so I lost my chickens. I said, well, you know, Mary, that's an awful lot of loss for a child to go through at once, you know. I mean, you lost your parents, you lost your whole family, you lost your home, and then this part of your life that was so sweet for you, you also lost. And she said, well, you know, I never really thought of it that way, but it was an awful lot of loss. And for a kid, you know, to go through all that, it was really hard times. So I never thought about my chickens, really, because I lost so many other things. And that's when I asked her about why she thought she was dreaming about her chickens now. And she got real quiet. Now, mind you, we're on a radio program, right? And she gets really quiet, and she says, well, I suppose it's getting really close to my time. And those chickens are getting ready. And the last time I saw those chickens, I was with my parents. So I suppose I'm about to go and see my parents real soon. And then she got real quiet again. And then she said, with such a sense of peace and a kind of a quiet joy, she said, I think I'm ready. So I guess radio and dreams really can't come together. And really, I encourage you all to enter that world now and then. Thank you.